So thank you very much to the organizer. It's a great honor to speak for you. And I will be speaking about the approach of mission-oriented agricultural innovation systems. So this is not just about transformational research, but about the system as a whole. And this is basically, expanding the thinking on agricultural innovation systems or agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. And I hope it will contribute to further shaping this approach and also helping us achieving the ambitions for the future. Because as you all know, the topic of agri-food systems transformation is hot. It's a very big topic now, for example, in view of the United Nations Food Systems Summit, but also all kinds of reports that have appeared lately, for example, by Cornell, socio-technical innovation bundles. AKIS Food has given its own view on what they think the transformation should look like. Lots of work from the European Commission, also the CGR system. And so there are now lots of transformative visions, missions out there. And one of those is to make it concrete alternative proteins. We see now a lot of work, almost an explosion recently, also a lot of attention in the media about changing our protein systems from animal-based protein to plant-based protein, cellular agriculture, using algae, and this is also getting increasingly close to our own life worlds. If you think about supermarkets where you do your shopping, you will see now many more products than, for example, 1 or 2 years ago. So this is an example of one of those angles within food systems transformation. Obviously, it's much broader. It's not just about alternative proteins. So what I want to do in this presentation is reflect a little bit on what do future or futures of agriculture imply for the agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. So we're at a very exciting moment now. There's all kinds of technological options, there's all kinds of drivers, there's a sense of urgency. But how do we support that? And how do we gear our AKIS to support these types of processes and also deal with the diversity of agricultural futures? So a brief recap for those that aren't familiar with this approach of agricultural innovation systems, which is the term used mostly outside of Europe, or agricultural knowledge and innovation systems, AKIS, which is the common term within Europe. This is basically about the whole network of players that produces agricultural innovation and transition. So this is not only about the research system, but it's also about other players in the chain. It's about policymakers, it's about farmers. It also has to do with what enables collaboration for innovation, the institutional frameworks, innovation policies. So it's really taking this as a collective effort. And Inge van Oost will talk also about multi-stakeholder collaboration. Well, that's a very key point within AIS or AKIS. So if we look at transition and transformation, because this presentation is about the role of AKIS or AIS in these processes, they have different drivers. It can be drivers of a natural nature, drought, climate change, of an economic nature. There's opportunities, but also needs to feed a growing population. But there's also increasing calls to change the economic systems, to come to more just economic systems, to more inclusive economic systems. But there's also technological drivers. Like there's a lot of buzz around AgTech now, a lot of transformative technologies. So, like I already indicated, there's a lot going on. And some of these have a potentially disruptive nature and affect power balances. That is also needed because we need to get out of what is called the current agri-food regime, which hasn't only given us good things like increased production and a really good supply of food, but also has all kinds of detrimental effects. Some of these technologies will disrupt that. That's also desired. But that has implications for our agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. There's implications on the one hand for those that stimulate the new developments. You see new networks emerging, new players coming in, which we might not have considered, like impact investors, Silicon Valley type companies. But it also has implications for those that still support innovation in sectors that are perhaps under threat. For example, animal production, they also need to cope with that new proteins are coming in. So this whole context of transformation and transition, it does something with innovation systems. And what is also important then to consider in this whole picture of transition, transformation, and AKIS is that we have become much more aware that we really need to take into account where are we going and who drives that, and what are the power balances also that we are perhaps disrupting or that we also want to shift. So this whole idea of directionality is a key element which has come to the front in recent years and which has implications for AKIS. And you see also these ideas of different directionalities reflected in all kinds of policy documents. There's also a diversity of them. And so the farm to fork strategy, it, for example, highlights digitalization very much. To some extent also agroecology, but some people from the agroecology scene say it's not enough. So they also already see like two directionalities, not clashing, but wrestling a little bit. In Canada, for example, you see it in this report, there's lots of emphasis on the age of data. In Nicaragua, they emphasize agroecology. I also put an example here from France, where also agroecology is highlighted. So there is different ways to the future. There are different future agricultures. It's not one future agriculture. There's diversity. And that is the whole thing, what we have come to realize in recent years, and we also wrote about that in some publications. For example, this one on Beyond Agriculture Innovation Systems, that we need to become much better aware of this diversity and how we deal with that in our AIS or our AKIS. So we've come a long way. We started with technology transfer and realized, no, innovation is a systemic process. Then we've also started to realize innovation is not value-free. There's different ways of shaping it. That's also that innovation 3.0. And now I think we are about to make the next step. How do we really manage that and become very aware of that to shape these missions towards future agriculture? So that is that idea of a mission-oriented AIS or AKIS. And this very much corresponds with recent ideas in transformation and transition thinking, that it's not just about we're doing systems, we're doing collaborative innovation. It's really about collaborative innovation for what? What should we build, but also what should we get rid of? What should we phase out? So combining these ideas on missions, also having a really clear purpose of where we are going, and one mission can be protein transition, another mission can be digital agriculture, another mission can be circular agriculture, another mission can be bioeconomy. Thinking in this idea of missions, and also that they should be clearly pushed forward by groups of actors, also with a clear role for the state, we came to this idea, combining also thinking from generic innovation studies, had the work from Marco Heckert. I saw that Jerry van Dijk was one of the attendants. This comes from Utrecht University. And this is about this idea. This is really about the network of actors that try to pursue a certain societal mission with clear directions, a clear portfolio of projects that support that mission, also clear investment going towards that mission, and really also reflecting on how is that mission proceeding. So this whole idea of mission orientation in AIS or AKIS is that you should support innovation with a certain purpose, but also ex-novation. So very clearly think about phase out or destabilization of non-sustainable system, and what some also have called the regime. And there's a very nice project if you want to check out, exnovation.brussels, where they also work with this concept. And there you can also see in this definition, it refers to processes of destabilization, decline, phasing out, because it's not just enough to create innovation, you also need to get rid of the stuff you no longer want. So that is also very much prominent in this type of thinking. So here's some examples. I already mentioned them. Protein transition could be a mission. Urban farming could be a mission. Circular bioeconomy, digital agriculture. And if you look at the most recent AKIS SCAR workgroup report, also these missions, they are listed. So there's an awareness, and there's also an awareness that we need to be transformative with our AKIS. The point I want to make, also with this publication, supporting food systems transformation, the what, why, who, where, and how of mission-oriented agriculture innovation systems, is that we don't very much know what is the landscape. So we know that some people go for agroecology. We know that some people say, no, we need to change the incumbent system. We can make current animal farming much more sustainable, and it's also needed, for example, for circular systems. We can't do without animals. Some say, yes, we should push urban farming and vertical much more. But yeah, that also has implications for horticulture. So there's lots of things going on, different systems, different networks within the AKIS that work for a certain directionality, for a certain mission, but we don't have really clear where are they, how big are they, also how international are they. And that is the whole idea of this approach, that we can start posing analytical questions. So for a given country, what are the explicit missions also in policy documents, but also perhaps the grassroots missions, the missions which are kind of under the radar. What is the relative size, the importance, the attention they get? Because some missions get a lot of attention from formal research and innovation systems and funders, and others don't get it. And should we get that balance then better if we have the complete landscape? But also, who is involved and why have they emerged? And perhaps, you know, is the fact that they have a technology focus, does that also contemplate societal aspects? So that can also give one insights on how could we make innovation inclusive, and also make sure that perhaps unintended effects are already preempted at an early stage. So this is also about mapping who drives them. Is this policymakers? Is this AgTech? For example, there's a lot of attention to agri-tech, saying that they're transformative, but they're really business as usual, and they enhance a further concentration of power. Also, who's included and who's excluded? Is it only innovation, also ex-innovation? So this is really about also extending the AKIS concept. And there's a very interesting publication, I put it on a previous slide, by Hydra Mosic. And she also said that perhaps we also need to think beyond agriculture, because this is about food systems change, and talk about the food and agriculture knowledge and innovation systems. And I also think that is much more useful than sticking to just agriculture, because food systems is more. And this would also allow, for example, connecting it to some of the already articulated missions, if we do this type of mapping. Since this presentation is also for what does this mean for research, transformational research, some reflection here for researchers and funders in relation also to this type of approach. This can also help that researchers individually or their institutes think about, what mission do I support? For example, am I very techno-optimistic, or do I also include other views or other dynamics in the way I do my research? What does my research include or exclude? How inclusive am I also to other viewpoints? Or what farmer of the future do I work for? There's a very interesting report, and it could be really clarifying that also institutes think about, you know, who are we supporting? Is that a purposeful choice, or is it just because this is how it has evolved? But also, how do I engage as a researcher with power and incumbent structures? Am I really supporting a sector which I shouldn't be supporting anymore? Should I perhaps work much more on phase out, but also then think about how could we create alternatives for those that then might lose? And also, what roles would I need to take? Is that also being a facilitator of change? It's also about how am I embedded within transdisciplinary networks, because these missions are by definition requiring transdisciplinary research. But also, how do I work for the long term? Because these missions are 20, 30 years, and the problem is that our investment is typically shorter. So this also has implications for the funders. And there's a really nice publication of Rina Schneider and colleagues, which also reflects on that. So this is also reflecting about the future, how game-changing are technologies, and how can we create a diversity of transition pathways. And that is perhaps also the difference with missions from the past, because also the Green Revolution and agricultural modernization was a mission, but that I think was much more like imposing a straitjacket. And I think now we have learned this transformation does not need to be the same for everyone, as long as it really achieves some sustainability goals. So this was my presentation. Thank you for your attention. You can always drop me an email, or you can follow me on Twitter if you want to know more about this. And thank you very much